playing.
Is it playing for you?
It is playing.
Yay! So
It's
this
a
is our official Life After Flash commentary. And I have never done a commentary before, so I'm a newbie to this, but Bob Lindenmayer, who is one of the greatest people I've ever met, is
Oh,
being
hi
part of this
everybody.
with me, because Bob was a very important part of the film, so it only seemed right to do this with him. So welcome, Bob.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, well, I mean, the truth of these DVD commentaries, the truth comes out, right?
That's
Which is, I
true.
horned my way into your project because I'm such a Flash Gordon fan. So,
But and rightly so, and I couldn't have done it without you, to be honest. So a little background about Bob is that the opening titles that we'll see, Bob created. Bob was also in the film, and Bob was part of the original, or the Oni, is it the Oni commentary with Sam and Melody for Flash Gordon?
that's right, many years ago. Yeah, I wish that could get out in the public world more. Obviously, we're working on that. So,
But thank you for doing this with me. So I have my glass of wine. I'm in London, and Bob is in Seattle. So we're doing this via the wonders of the internet.
that's right. That's right. I have
So
my coffee because it's only noon
I've,
here. So,
I'm on glass number two, so hopefully it all goes
excellent.
okay. The truth will come
Excellent.
out. So,
Right.
so yeah, so this is Life After Flash. This is 4 years in the making of one of my favorite films that I think ever exists, Flash Gordon. Now, Bob, question for you. When did you first see Flash Gordon?
I saw it in the theater when it came out in an afternoon matinee, and it was amazing because me and my buddy were the only ones in the theater, and the projectionist like literally had the volume on 11, so it was the loudest, biggest uh, film I'd seen at that point. And of course, being a designer and in science fiction and stuff, you know, just like all these lovely people who are on screen right now, just, were really touched by uh, the whole thing. How about you? When did you see it first?
So I don't remember ever seeing it for the first time. I had grown up in England. It's different. Flash Gordon's a Christmas film in England, and it's something that you just kind of grow up with. So I've never seen it in the cinema
Oh, right.
before. But the first time I saw it on the cinema screen was when we showed it at Beyond Fest, and I was sitting next to Melody, and it was 35 mil, and it was the most fabulous experience. But it's just always been part of my life.
Now, this is my first attempt at doing a audio commentary, and then I've realized when I edit, I have massive gaps. So anytime I pop up and sound weird, or there's a really deep voice, that is Ash, the producer, coming on board just to fill it in so I can time it properly.
I have to digress because your opening titles are playing right
Here they
now.
are. Yeah.
Here they are. So tell
Yeah.
me, how did you come up with these? Because I know we talked about a bit of a brief and we wanted them to kind of resemble the original titles, but how did you actually go about
Yeah.
them?
Yeah. Well, originally, obviously we went through some iterations of this, and initially I just ended up making a new title sequence for the Flash Gordon movie, not necessarily a title sequence for your film, because I was so excited about Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
Uh, and through that process, obviously, I, as we talked, the big neon title sequence originally, and specifically the Neon Hawkman, was something that was just burned into my memory back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And those elements could only exist in a 1980 Flash Gordon film. So visually, I thought it'd be really great to, right, announce that, because essentially this is the sequel. It's
Yes.
not the sequel everybody was expecting in 1980, but it definitely is a sequel and kind of an answer to the film in a lot of ways, which was super exciting. And
But
then I
I
guess
just
the other, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I just think that the most brilliant title sequences, and for me, I really wanted to play homage to the original with like the colors and the little nods to like you had the Hawkman and the neon and stuff, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, your brilliant contribution was because originally I was playing with comic book titles and stuff like that, just like in the original. But when you suggested doing like comic book panel versions from your film, it just really put it all together. It was such a great idea.
And kudos to
And
Ash too. That was his idea. The panel bits.
yeah, yeah,
To bring it
yeah.
in.
So who is Ash?
Oh, so Ash
For
is
those
my
people who don't know.
producer / partner. He's the one talking in the background occasionally.
This is Ash. I'm now the guy talking in the foreground, in Laredo. I'm the guy helping Lisa produce Life After Flash, and what a journey it has been.
Right, so this is Laredo, this footage.
All
and
right.
So this was actually, and
Is this the first con you shot with Sam?
this is the very first day I ever met Sam. Like this
Oh,
was,
wow.
yeah, so I Skyped him in October 2014 to pitch him this film. This is how long ago it was. Then this was January 2015 where we really flew here and just to meet him. I didn't know if he would like us, to kind of pitch him the idea of crowdfunding. And I actually think this is the very, very first shot we ever did here. Sam's prayer walk is actually the first time we put the camera on him. And so this is Ash filming here. But it was the most amazing experience. And I had this time the second night because Melody came down as well for it. And I was in a restaurant and it hit me then. I was with Sam and Melody and I was like, oh my God, I'm with Flash and Dale. I don't know what to say. And I had to go to the bathroom and compose myself. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. I don't understand what I'm supposed to do with this. Like, what if I just can't do it? And what if it fails? And what if I say something stupid? And so that was a really kind of stressful shoot because it was like paving the way of what the film could be. And I thought, well, what if, I remember saying to Ash, like, I don't think Sam likes me because I read into emails a lot and he didn't put like a smiley emoji after his comment. And I just said to Ash, I think he hates me. Like, I think he's sick of me already. And it just, but we were there for about 5 days.
Well, he's so specific and kind of meticulous in his communication. And it's even more so in email, right? It's just like
very military.
Whoa, exactly.
Yeah. And even now, 4 years later, I get emails from him and I think, have I done something wrong? If I said something to upset him. But anyway, it was an incredible time, and we were at the STC Comic-Con, and they were, that was the very first Comic-Con I had ever been to as well. Little did I know. But it was the most amazing community. Like, we really walked around and everyone was just like, how can I help? Do you want some artwork? Do you want to stay at our house? Do you want to, hang out? What can I do? So that was the first touch that I had on knowing the community of sci-fi and Comic-Cons, and it was a pretty interesting experience, to say the least.
So was that a 2-day event or a 3-day event, or?
Oh, I believe it was.
You spend the whole weekend with Sam, or?
We spent the whole weekend with Sam, and then we went round and like the bit in the beginning where he's in the car. That's like 4 a.m. doing all his press. They had a George Washington night, the night before, and we just really followed him everywhere, and it was it was very eye-opening to the beginning of the journey, shall we say, of all the things to come. But
So did you think it was a good idea after meeting him, right? Like, it's a good idea to want to make a film about Flash Gordon, but then,
I was really
actually meeting Sam was like, holy cow, like.
There was that, because then I was like, I remember thinking, what am I taking on? Like, the fan base is so passionate about Flash Gordon. What if I just don't do it? What if I don't do it properly? And to be honest, I didn't set out making a film about Flash Gordon per se. It was about Sam, and it was, how can we maybe talk about Sam and everything that happened on set? We must talk about we have to talk to Melody. So then I would contact Melody, and then and then you think, well, you can't really do a film talking with Melody unless you talk to Brian, and then it evolved into being this film to celebrate Flash Gordon as well as being about, there's Stan Lee. Oh, I'm so sad.
Yeah, there he is. The man.
He was. Do you know what? He smelt of soap. That was my memory of Stan Lee. He was just very clean and fresh and smelt of soap. And he had this little wheelchair that they would wheel him around on. As soon as he saw a fan or if like a female, he would be up on his feet, and he was the life of the party, and he was such a lovely man. So that was
Nice.
that was a memory I'll never forget.
Was that at Alamo also, or was that a different con?
No, that was Alamo City. So the majority of the Comic-Con stuff that we shot was at Alamo City in San Antonio. If anyone gets to go, they have the most incredible lineup. They had Arnold Schwarzenegger this year. I was very impressed.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, but so most of the Comic-Con footage that we got was from Alamo. And it was interesting. You talk to these people that normally if you have to go through agents, you wouldn't get a look in, and then you talk to them in person at these Comic-Cons, and then more like Robert Rodriguez, I never thought I would get an interview with him, and then suddenly, you know, he's this massive Flash Gordon fan, and so is Ray Park, and so is Sean Gunn, and you would never know that about someone unless you can go and talk to them in person, and that's what's so good about the Comic-Cons.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I mean that kind of feeds into thematically what we were chatting about before, was just access to cast members and people in the film. How much of a challenge was that for you to start pulling in other cast members? Did they search you out, or did you have to chase them down?
I very much chased. Chase is probably the wrong word for certain people. Melody was like, whatever you need, I'll do it. You know, I love the film, I love Sam, whatever you want me to do. And she has just been like the sweetheart of the production. I had an advantage of being from the UK, and obviously Flash Gordon was shot in the UK. So the biggest hurdle at the beginning for me was thinking, how am I going to make a film about someone who lives in the States and I'm in England? But while we were waiting to raise the money for crowdfunding and building the audience, we would just go out with the camera and interview all the UK actors that were in it. So to begin with, it was actually pretty easy to find people. You know, Howard Blake has his email on his website, and so does Peter Duncan. And, you know, and it just became a case of emailing these people and going, how can I just sit down with you for 20 minutes and talk to you about this film? And obviously having Sam on board really helped, because it added that credibility to everything.
Right, yeah, for sure. Sure.
But it was the only person that really emailed me was George Gibbs, this special effects artist, is still really good friends with Trevor Butterfield, the Hawkman, and they go to the pub together, and he just said, hey, do you want to interview Trevor? I went, yep, that sounds great. So
nice. Well, I mean, that was me too, right? Like, I emailed you. How about folks like, did you have to call Alex Ross? I know he's an epic Flash Gordon fan, or did he call you?
Oh, what a fan. If anyone wants a man cave, his house, we shot the interview in the basement of his house in Chicago.
Yeah, I've been to his house.
Have you?
It
rivals yours, dare I say
it. It really does. Well, I don't have a basketball court in my basement.
Or a life-size Silver Surfer.
Yes.
But no, Alex Ross actually came to me through, well, Sam had his contact, but also Jason Lenzi, who's one of the funny duo in it.
Yes.
He's really good friends with him, because Jason was responsible for the DVD re-release in 2007 and convinced Universal to have Alex do the cover for it. So he had a relationship already. And Alex was obviously more than happy. And the outfit that you see behind Alex, the Ming outfit, was what he had got created for his famous Halloween party that he wore. He went as Ming one year, and so that was his Halloween.
I actually have pictures of that.
Oh, do you? How did you go?
Well, I didn't go to the Halloween party. He sent them to me. We bonded over Flash Gordon when I was doing my DVD commentary with Sam and Melody. A really good friend of mine was good friends with Alex, so he introduced us because he's like, "Oh, you guys would get along great." Blah, blah, blah.
What was your experience with Sam and Melody for the commentary?
Well, it was very similar to yours. Like the short version of it is I stalked Sam through eBay. Actually, he was selling a bunch of Flash Gordon memorabilia, and the eBay description was like, and if you pay $100,000 for this stuff, Sam Jones will hand deliver it to you. And I was like, holy cow.
It was him personally selling it on eBay.
Well, he was selling it like a friend was selling it on his behalf so he could be insulated from That a little bit. So I
Gotcha.
basically just, stalked this guy until Sam actually just gave me a call out of the blue. I saved the voicemail.
That's
Uh,
hilarious.
yeah, and then after a year or two of talking and doing all that, I said, "Hey, I really want to do a DVD commentary." And it's interesting because it was in that same window when Jason was working on the DVD re-release with Alex, because Alex and I talked about that, and I was actually working a little bit with Jason Lindsay on his action figure line that he was putting out back then. So I contributed in very, very tiny ways to that. So that was all happening at the same time, and essentially, so Sam was like, "Oh yeah, that'd be great. How if I call Melody? She'll be game for it." And I was like, "Well, yeah, that'd be amazing." This guy named Kevin Schwobel, who has an online, gosh, I don't know, I guess it's a satellite radio station that does all things kind of geeky and stuff like that. So essentially, Sam called Melody, and Melody said, "Oh well, I met this guy Kevin at a Comic-Con, and we were thinking about doing the same thing." And Sam said, "Well, I'm not going to do it without Bob." And of course, Melody did not know me yet, so she's like, "Well, I'm not going to do it without Kevin," because she had a relationship with him. So I was like, "All right, well, let's do like a superhero team up, and we'll all get together and like do it together." Sam and I flew out to New York, where Melody was and Kevin was, and we met for the weekend in New Jersey, and hung out. And this was before Ted and everything, so Flash Gordon wasn't in the public eye as much. But like Sam basically flew out to New York, and he didn't really have a place to stay. I was sleeping on Kevin's couch, and Sam was like, "Oh, I'll drive into town and get a hotel and stuff." And we're like, "Sam, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning." So essentially, Sam and I like shared couches. Like he was on one couch, I was on the other, and it was just so,
Awesome.
for a fan, it's just like that. This is the weirdest thing, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
couch surfing with Flash Gordon. But yeah, I had the same. Sam is so commanding, and it was so. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
little overwhelming, right? He's always the man with the plan. And what really helped, which I think is what you were kind of getting at too, when Melody came in, like they're like brother and sister.
100%.
They care for each other. They just have such a lovely relationship. Like
It's so
Melody
sweet
would pull
to
me
see.
aside, and it's just like, "Sam hasn't eaten in 5 hours. We should really get Sam some food." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, we can do that." And yeah, it was just lovely. Yeah, so we did the DVD, and Kevin sold it through his website. I think you could pay to stream it, and then we did 100 signed DVDs with Sam and Melody, and Alex Ross did the cover art for that. It's a piece of art that barely anybody has seen. It's of Sam and Melody in classic Alex Ross art style.
Now, is that the one that was on the back cover of the reunion program for anyone who came
That's
to
right, yeah.
the BAFTA reunion? That was an amazing piece of art.
Yeah, it turned out really well. Yeah, the BAFTA reunion, like I don't know how much we want to talk about that, but obviously I just saw Peter Wyngarde, and that was the first time I met him, was at that reunion.
Yeah,
and
well, there's clips at the end of it, so we can
Oh, that's right.
reminisce then. But this film is Peter Wyngarde's last on-screen appearance, which
that's right.
is pretty sad, but a very strange thing to be when you grow up with someone's career. He was so well dressed all the time. He was so well dressed, and he was. And I don't want to say anything bad about Peter. He was probably, though, I don't want to use the word diva-ish, but he was the only person that asked for a makeup artist on set.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and because he's very grand and very theatrical, and very on the level with Laurence Olivier, and he had these most amazing stories. But I would ask him a question about, say, Dino, and he would go on a rabbit trail about a story of Vivian Leigh or some amazing actress,
Right.
and then not mention Dino at all, and I would then have to re-ask it, and he would say, "But I've already told you, I'm not going to go there again. How dare you?" And I was like, "Oh, but I need the answer." But but he was one of my most favorite people to meet, because he was just the epitome of what you would think Hollywood
Well,
would
and
be.
speaking of Rabbit Trail, Brian Blessed.
Brian Blessed. What a man.
You just need to buckle up when he starts.
Yes, he
seems
was.
like.
Yeah, and again, he was someone, same person, same as Melody, said, "I would do it for Sam. I would do anything for Sam." But he took a year and a half to lock down, just because his schedule is so busy with book signings and shoots, and so he was a tricky one that I was really worried. I just thought, how can you release a film about Flash Gordon without Brian Blessed in it? And it was quite stressful, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And then when you crowdfund, people know about it for so long. You have this pressure where people are messaging going, "What's happening? Why isn't it out yet? I'm losing interest. When are you going to finish it?" And you can't, it's so hard to explain to people. Like, you want to make it the best film possible. But I can imagine the backlash if I didn't have Brian Blessed in it. And he certainly makes the film, I think, with all his incredible stories. And he is definitely the exact character you expect, hands down.
Yeah, he seems like it.
He's brilliant.
Speaking of the Kickstarter thing and expectations and stuff like that, there are some cast members that you didn't get in the film.
No.
Are you bummed about that, or?
Yeah, there were certain emotions that one goes through when you're trying to make a film like this, and at the beginning it was definitely, I was trying to make a film that I wanted to see as a fan of the film, and that I knew fans would want to see, and you want it to be as complete as possible. But then you just think, people don't owe me anything. Everyone who's in this film really just gave their time to be in it. And they chose to be in it, and they were very gracious. But certain people, for whatever reason, don't want to be in it. So I tried to get as many of the other cast members as possible to make it feel like hopefully you don't miss them. But it is funny how many people message me as though I haven't thought about it and go, "Did you, I know you're making a film about Flash Gordon, but have you thought about getting Timothy Dalton? Like, And I just think, well, of course I have. Genuinely, I must have emailed his agent about 9 times to be involved. But just some people, for whatever reason, don't want to be in it. And there are, I think, 4 key people that are missing. Each one has their own lovely story about why they're not involved. But it was a very big realization for me that they don't owe me anything, and they don't have to be in it. It would have been lovely, but I hope that I had enough people from the film, both cast and crew, to kind of compensate and build that idea of love that everyone has for the film.
Right. Well, and that's what's kind of interesting too, right? Because these are just all people, actors, and they all have their different experiences with the film, right? Like, not everybody in the world is a fan of Flash Gordon, right? So if you take that cross section and just apply it to the folks who were in the film, right? Like, you seem to find everybody who feels the same way you do about the film, right? Like, I mean, that really comes through, especially Peter Duncan. You can tell he totally loves this movie.
He does. Do you know what? That's a nice way to think about it. Everyone who's in this film loves Flash Gordon as much as we do. That's a really nice way to think about it. I hadn't thought about that before. No one's under duress to be in this film.
Right.
Right. So it's nice, and I think it comes through. And it was funny how people spoke about it. Like, they genuinely had these amazing memories of being on set. Some of them weren't all good. I think this particular bit we're watching is talking about that. But everyone really talked about it with this incredible reverence of loving this experience, and they had such fond memories of the people that they met, and all the cast and the crew and some of the people they got to work with. So I think it was, maybe when you look, it's like when you watch a film, you see when you see it, you go, oh, it's okay. And then the next day, it's like a brilliant film. And then 3 days later, it's like the greatest film you've ever seen. Like maybe 35 years later, they've forgotten all the negatives. But it was definitely nice to talk to these people who had these incredible experiences on set. Except I kept forgetting I was talking about a film 35 years ago, and most of the time I can't remember what I had for breakfast last week. But the memories that these people have of all these things that happened 35 years ago, they remembered conversations and what they were wearing, and except for Topol, who hadn't seen the film in literally hadn't seen the film in 35 years. So I was talking about all these scenes, and he was like, well, I don't know. I remembered to be fun.
Oh, interesting.
So I should have gotten him to watch it before I interviewed him, but everyone had these incredible memories, and you did forget you were talking to people about something that happened 35 years ago.
I'm assuming everybody that you interviewed at one point or another did a Dino De Laurentiis impersonation.
Yes.
Like anytime somebody says Dino in the film, it's like, well, and Dino, comma, and then they try to emulate his.
There was not one person who talked about Dino or said a quote that wasn't in the accent, and it was really strange. So Martha was Dino's wife. She wasn't involved in Flash Gordon, but she's a massive producer now in her own right. But even her was, Dino's voice to a T. And it was the funniest thing and so strange. But I would have loved to have met him. But I think he passed away in 2010.
Yeah.
But he was certainly a character that you can see why maybe people were a bit scared of at the time.
Yeah, for sure. And that's another interesting thing as far as we were talking about folks that didn't make it in the film. Can you talk a little bit about like Max once hit out, like Timothy Dalton and even Dino De Laurentiis through the use of that vintage footage.
Yes.
Like they are part of the film, right? Like they don't seem missing.
Yeah.
Did you find that footage, or what was the choice in you?
I was going to ask if you sent me that footage.
I did. That's why I'm asking.
That's what I was like. He's asking me, have I just forgotten? Yes. No. You sent me the footage, and I don't know. I think you said you found it on like a VHS or something. It's the most.
I did, yes.
It's the most incredible footage, and funnily, that the start countdown at the beginning of the film is the original from that as well. So if you listen closely, the very first thing you can hear is Flash Gordon real. There's like some reference to Flash Gordon in it, but it's the most incredible footage, and I don't understand how it hasn't ever been released.
Yeah, I don't know.
How did you just find it on one of your prop collecting jaunties? How did you get it?
Yeah, there was a rumor about, this 15-minute long vintage documentary in the 80s, and I just started searching for it, and the internet was less sophisticated then, but a little Flash Gordon documentary thing came up on this guy's site that just basically sold like movies that were out of print or that he videotaped off a television, and it was just a text string of like, this is all I have, and each one's $14. And I was like, wow, this is kind of sketchy and weird. And there's one that just said Flash Gordon documentary, and I was like, well, it's worth $16 to see what it was. And of course, when I got it, I was just like, holy cow! Like, because there is no vintage video. I mean, there's tons of photographs, which are lovely, but to actually see something like that, and you have to imagine, and that's what's super fun about collecting stuff and chasing this film around for so long, especially with Dino De Laurentiis, right? The amount of art and props and production, I think I can say that in the film. Like there has to be like more footage and more interviews out there, but when the film wasn't a success, it just got put in some box somewhere, and nobody's seen it since, right?
And then this little gem popped up.
Yeah, it was amazing. Super fun. I wish there was, you always want more, but in the film, it just makes so much sense, right?
Yeah, I love seeing the actors interviewed as themselves, but in character. Especially after knowing them as well. You know, you can see, it's funny watching like when Sam, he's younger and he laughs and you just go, I know that laugh. Like that is the same person that we know now.
Lisa.
Yeah, no, he's such a character. But we were just watching the section about the voice. So I have to say, when I become obsessed with something, I really become obsessed with it. And I had this goal to track down who did the voice of Sam in the film. And I had this vision that, you know, the end of the film, it would fade out and then you wouldn't see anything, it'd just be black, but you'd hear this voice come in and it would be like Flash Gordon's voice, and then we'd do this big reveal. And I must have spent about 2 years trying to find out who did the voice. I was calling the sound recordist, like I tracked down the sound recordist from the film, the ADR guy.
Oh, wow.
I was calling like the casting director from the film, the recording studios at Elstree and Pinewood back in the 70s, and trying to work out maybe there were records of an actor that came in to do a voice record.
Sure.
And the closest that I got was, it's in the film when Wyngarde says it's someone from Thunderbirds, which I've never really watched Thunderbirds, but I imagine that the audience from Flash Gordon would know Thunderbirds.
Yes.
So I managed to get hold of a few Thunderbirds actors, and I was talking to them on the phone, and I have to say, and I don't want to spread rumors here, this is like unofficial, but all signs pointed to an actor called Jeremy Wilkin, who I don't have it in front of me which voice he did from Thunderbirds, but I spoke to him on the phone. He recently passed, sadly, but I spoke to him on the phone, and he denied it a bit too quickly. And I wonder if there was something back in the day, if you're doing these kind of contractual voices, that you're not allowed to say anything, or I don't know how it worked back then. But
well, especially with the dynamic of the film and who is involved. I mean, that makes perfect sense that you have to sign something, you know.
Yeah, it may be wrong, but there were a few other people from the Thunderbirds cast that suggested that name. So I thought I would just throw it out there and start a whirlwind of rumors.
Yeah, you should.
But that would be my guess.
Yeah, you know, when I did like my commentary, like that was the big question too. Of course, I didn't know, like I wasn't super clear that Flash had even been dubbed, right? Like as a kid, I just took in the movie, and obviously now you can kind of tell in some moments, but like one, it's done really well, I thought.
Yeah.
And then just to hear Sam talk about it, and the whole, you know, the big thing, the big drama point, why he was not called back, and all that. Was that your original kind of goal for this film, was to answer that question, or was it just the love of Flash in general? You know what I'm saying?
It was really interesting for me starting this film because I didn't know what the story was going to be. When I got in contact with Sam, I just said, I want to do a film on your life. You know, I love Flash Gordon. You have to be, you don't want to say, you know, I don't know what you've done since. Like, obviously he's done like so many movies and TV shows, but I had just not personally seen them. So I wasn't aware of what he had done. So for me, it was like, you know, I know you in Flash Gordon. I'd love to know what your life was like. But going into it, you know, you normally have a script and you know exactly the arcs and the acts that the film's going to follow. And I had a lot of my friends saying, well, where's the drama? What's going to happen? And I just kept saying, I don't know. And I started to doubt what the film would be, because they just said, how are you going to do a film if you don't know what's going to be in it? But I felt so passionate about doing something that could celebrate a film that I just adored. And I wanted to just immerse myself in the real world of Flash. But yeah, I didn't know what the story was going to be. And so I had thought, okay, the interviews with Sam, because it's so personal, I had to stage them. So the very first interview we did was that Laredo one where you can see the record and there's props to the right of him. So that was very top line. That was like, what happened how was Flash Gordon? How did you get the audition? What was it like filming? Very, very top level. Then every interview after that, you kind of dig a little deeper about personal stories. And it was actually when we were interviewing his friend Patrick Sinesprit that he told us everything that had happened, because Sam was so amazing with this that he just said to his friends, no matter what you say, as long as it's the truth, it doesn't matter, just be honest. So his friend told us what Sam had gone through, and then this is the interview now with Sam with that background that we actually did but the morning of the reunion in London. It was the very last interview we did with him, where I just said to him, your friends have told me all these things, there's Patrick. So he was instrumental to the story. I just said, I need to talk to you, and this is what your friends have said, we need to sit down again. And he spoke to Ramona and talked about it, and then just opened up to us. But I had no idea until his friends told us with those interviews. I had no idea what the story was. So it's really hard to go into it with a plan, which is a really scary idea, you know. And like I said at the beginning, I thought it would just be a film about Sam as well. I had no intention of making it a kind of making of blend with Sam. So it was much of a discovery for me, you know. And I started to edit as we were shooting, and I had this timeline that I would try and work to, and every time I learned something new, I would add it into this edit plan.
Oh.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I had this plan originally. I laid out the structure of Flash Gordon, so I knew the arc of Flash, the character, and I wanted to mirror Sam's journey with this. You know, Sam's relationships with Melody and Ornella would mirror his personal relationships, and in the hope that when you watch the film, the documentary, you would kind of feel like you're going on the same journey. But that proved to be too complicated, so I didn't really do that. But that's how I had to approach it, was every time I learned something new, I had to kind of fit it into the story and go, well, how is this going to be told? So that was probably one of the biggest challenges, and also navigating in the edit, waiting between Sam's personal story and the film behind the scenes as well. It was pretty tricky. Plus the fact I didn't even intend to edit it.
Challenging.
Yeah. So
So you did all the editing also then?
Yes, but I didn't
Wow.
plan to. I had always wanted to have an editor, because then you can have an objective opinion. But as you go, I just thought, okay, I'll just organize the footage for someone, and when they come in, it'll be there ready. And then as time went on and you're trying to raise money and you just need to start it, then I would put things in folders and color coordinate them and go, when I get an editor, I'll explain this. And then I started cutting sections thinking, well, when I get an editor. And then Ash just came up to me one day and he's like, you've got to edit this yourself. You know everything. And also when you're crowdfunding, you can't guarantee that you can raise money for an editor. So it was kind of, it was that element, and I'm really glad I did now. But it is difficult. The first edit was 2 hours 15. And I was like, it's done. It's a masterpiece. I'm finished. Print. And Ash just said, no. No. And I think I showed you, it wasn't like it was very rough. I hadn't really got many interviews then, but I brought a rough cut to your house when we interviewed you. And I remember afterwards, there was silence. And this was before we did your interview. So I had showed you and you're like, well, and then you started in a very nice way giving your very right opinion. And then I thought, oh God, I've completely screwed this up. It's terrible. And then so the whole time I'm interviewing you, like I feel really sick that I've just wasted that I've wasted 2 years on something. I was like, no. So anyway, so long story is that, when you're so close to it, it's good to have someone come in. So Ash was very good. He just said, no, it needs to be keep cutting. And then it got to 1 hour 46, and that's the one that we had for our private screenings. And even after seeing that, Ash was like, snip, snip, snip. So, and it was the right call as well. There were the feedback from that was it was a bit too long. So now this version is the final, shortest version. But, when you think it's finished and you have to go back through sound and back through grade, and it's quite disheartening. But yeah, I genuinely thought my 2 hour 15 edit was the finished masterpiece, which was clearly not.
Is there anything that you wish you hadn't cut out now that you've had some distance from it?
To be honest, no, because I know that I can
nice.
release it. I know that it works without it. and I know that I can always
Right.
release footage on special features. This stuff we're looking at now was shot in Rochdale in England. And the night before this, there was a charity dinner where Peter and Sam saw each other for the first time in 30 years that I got on film that isn't in it. So that would have been nice.
Now, coming up, this is one of my favourite scenes. This guy just could not believe that he'd met Flash Gordon up north, just on the high street, going out to get his shopping. The next thing you know, he's sat with Flash Gordon. It literally blew his mind, I think.
Talking about the big bender he's going to have out down in Spain with all his mates, where he's just going to get drunk the whole time.
And this sort of scary old thing is called Old Nell, I think it was called. And it was this dude's old marionette that he's been playing with for years. And it was quite an interesting looking old thing. It stole the show a little bit, to be honest.
So as you can hear, this is Ash and I popping up again to fill in another editing gap I had in this audio commentary. This very high quality production audio commentary. So apologies to everyone, but we're doing our best. What else did you like about Rochdale?
I like the fact that Sam just got himself a taxi and just turned up and got on with it. No airs and graces. Picks up all his stuff and just heads straight in there. And within about 10 seconds of arriving, you'll see in a second, he's got pretty much everybody organised in true Sam military style. And he doesn't waste any time in getting things done.
One of my original edits of this section, of him putting up the poster of Alex Ross, was about 6 times as long, because it really was a mammoth effort to try and get all those bits and pieces together. But he was the only one there on his knees doing it himself. You know, everyone else kind of arrived later, and he would normally have arrived the day before, but they couldn't let him in. So he's like super prepared and Mr. Hands-on with his efforts.
And he's looking for more help than he's getting here. I always like that little shot where he looks away.
But this was a really nice con, because this was one of 2 that we only did in the UK. And it was in this incredible building. I don't know if it was a cathedral or...
It was an old town hall, I think.
It was really cool, DaleCon. And they had the rocket cycle, which you can see later in the film too. So Sam was really the star of this show with his poster, trying to get it done.
I think he could barely understand what a lot of northern people say, because the accent is very thick. It's right proper up north, so when people talk about Flash Gordon, it sounds a bit like this.
Well, Ash, you're a Brummie, aren't you? From Birmingham?
But Birmingham is a completely different accent. But, this is more of a Birmingham accent, but yes, I was talking more of a northern accent. No, I've gone London now. Anyway, this is Lisa and Ash's accents.
And we still have like 20 seconds to fill.
To literally fill.
What else? What were your favourite parts of shooting, just in general?
This one was this was a really fun con, because it was just going from one extreme of a huge kind of international American con to a Northern England kind of, again,
Made
really
with love
die-hard fans. And, you know, the people there were just blown away by seeing Sam and seeing the whole experience.
What I liked about this one, which you can see in the extended version on either the DVD or the Blu-ray, is that this con had a lot of the behind the scenes people, but like the extras and the people with really minor roles in the film. So it was interesting to get their stories. You know, they were the ones that hung out with the cast and crew more than a lot of people, you know, and there was a bit of gossip happening that I didn't put in the film. Then maybe one day I'll tell people. But yeah, it was interesting for that, to see how popular even those people with smaller roles were getting attention.
Peter Duncan was a Blue Peter presenter, which I don't think anyone in America gets that joke. But it's this amazing
Correct.
thing on Blue Peter where all the presenters, like, you're making something alongside them. I used to try and make the Thunderbird Island. And because they can't finish it on the show, they go, here's one I made earlier. But we must move on, because this is the prop section, which you are in.
There's where I live.
Yeah,
there I am.
So tell me about you have the most incredible collection I have ever seen. And also, it's not just Flash Gordon, like, you can't see it, but behind the camera you've got like the figurine from Christine and Godzilla's foot and Babe Pig and just... So what is your prop collection like, and how did you even get into prop collecting?
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, being part of this Star Wars generation, you know, and collecting Star Wars action figures, you got to collect them all.
Yeah.
And, you know, like that was, you know, I think a lot of a lot of folks in my generation are like that. And like at a certain point, collecting toys wasn't doing it for me. And there were a lot of great toys back then too. And I just realized if I just played it calm and didn't buy toys, which I think I say in the film, that I could start actually getting
something real from the
movie
film.
props. Yeah. And basically my strategy was, since I'm a graphic designer, I've always had a huge movie poster collection from back when I was 10 all the way till now. And it was just like, I am going to try to get one prop to go underneath each movie poster of the films that I love.
Oh, that's a great idea.
With two outliers, which are I'm going to try to buy anything possible from Flash Gordon and anything possible from the Rocketeer. And Speed Racer. So maybe three. And since then, it can become an addiction and get pretty crazy. And what's interesting about the Flash Gordon stuff is I had probably 3 times as much stuff from Flash Gordon. And you see in the film, my buddy Rolf is the guy with all the other props. Some of which I owned, some of which he owned.
Yeah, Prince Baron's shirt was very special.
It's amazing.
It was very soft.
I know it was, wasn't it? I've actually put that on. So.
But it's because it's not like you just have a tank top. Like you have, like just everything from. I mean, Rolf has the pipe, and you've got the Pigman, and like the sword, and the Hawkman, and the Ajax, and it's just you have such an incredible collection. It almost feels like you have everything from the film. So is there anything, 2 questions, anything that you don't have that you really want, and anything that you have gotten since we've filmed with you?
Well, the second question, I finally got Melody Anderson's Slave Girl
You did
tiara,
get it. Wow.
her headdress.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to have something from Flash and something from Dale.
That's nice.
And it's it's amazing. When I got it, and Melody in my DVD commentary actually talks about this. It's made out of some weird leather plastic thing that all the beads are put on, and basically the heat from the lights would melt it. So if you watch the film, her tiara like goes up and down in the film.
Hilarious.
It starts to curl in on itself. And when I got it, of course, it was all curled in and disheveled, and it took me a couple months of carefully heating it up and putting it in between 2 pieces of wood to like slowly relax it back into its original shape. So it looks brand new now.
So is there anything? Is there anything that is like the ultimate that no one has ever acquired, but everyone is seeking out, or that you really want from Flash Gordon?
Yeah, well, there's two things. Firstly, one of them is I used to have the original model for the Wood Beast.
Right. Like what they used to make the Wood Beast with.
Yes. And of course, just through your film, Peter still has the original Wood Beast, which everybody else in the entire world thought was gone forever. And it was in his broom closet or under the stairs. Yeah. So it's really lovely that survives. It's very Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? Like all these treasures just keep like popping up that you cannot believe. And then the other thing, obviously, which would be, I'm pretty satisfied with my collection. The Flash Gordon tank top really made everything else kind of less important. It's like, I don't really need another laser gun. Look, I've got Flash Gordon's tank top.
Yeah. But you'll still get the laser gun.
I would, yes. Yeah. Obviously, Flash Gordon's t-shirt would probably be top of the list as far as the Flash Gordon prop goes, because obviously that could only exist in one universe.
But I love the line you say in the film where you say you're living in Flash Gordon. which it's true. Like, it
Yes.
really felt like that when you're in your house, because it's weird. It's different when you meet the actors, because you separate yourself from it, and you don't, you have the odd moment where you go, oh my God, this is, Dale or Flash, but
Right.
they're them. But when you're in your house and you're like with the pig garden, with like Clytus's mask, for me was the most incredible thing to look at, because it is like you're in the film, and it's such a, I guess, powerful thing. And I totally get why people collect props now after being in your house, because you feel like you're just so connected to it even more, which is
Right.
really
Well,
special.
I mean, it's this, you being a filmmaker, like you're expressing the same thing I'm expressing.
Just the
with
only
my
way
prop
we know how.
collecting in filmmaking, right? Yeah. Like, well, and same with all these folks who love Flash Gordon,
Yeah.
right? Like everybody kind of does their version so they can feel, try to recapture that first time they saw Flash, or that feeling of what it meant to them.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people are like so excited for your film and impatient for your film, right? Because they're desperately wanting to feel that too, and they're so exciting. Like, I mean, the service that you've done for Flash Gordon fans, it's going to go down in history. Like,
Well,
it's pretty amazing.
I'm very excited. Well, by the time people hear this, it will be out to the world. So I'm very excited for it to be out, because there were moments where I just thought, I don't know if I can finish it, and there was a period in the middle where just it was so stressful, and and sometimes things don't go your way,
Yeah.
and I was trying to think, like, be in that mindset of, people don't have to be in it if they don't want to.
Right.
You can't make people be involved. But then I just remember thinking, like, what an amazing experience this is. It's not every day you get to be in the backseat of Topol's car as he sings Beatles songs to you as he's driving you to his charity, and he was like the sweetest guy, and or you're hanging out having tea with Melody, and like having Brian May play the piano for you, and so it was really like there was a wake up call halfway where I just thought, like, what an incredible experience. And it allowed me to learn to be even more grateful for things that happen, because it's it's a film that's so special to so many people, and I want to do it justice. So I'm very excited that it's finished and it's out there to the world, which is good.
Yeah.
Obviously I would have loved to have met Max, but hey ho.
Yeah, for sure.
Another time.
Maybe he'll see this and call you.
Maybe.
How many air miles have you racked up from this production? How many times did you, like, how many countries did you go to? Like, I mean, you were in the US a couple times, right?
We were only in the States, well, twice, and then I had to be in the States for something else, so I accumulated 1 or 2 more interviews with that. But essentially it was 2 shoots in the States, which weren't very long. There was about 2 weeks for the first one and a week for the second one. So in reality, I maybe only spent like a week to 2 weeks with Sam for the whole production, which seems nuts. And then we did a couple of days in Italy for Renato, which was just amazing. It's such like a little chocolate box town that he lives in, and his wife, they took us out to lunch, and it was, you just feel ridiculously untalented next to someone like him, because he's showing you all his posters. And then there was a day in Mexico with Sam that we did for the security sequence.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And then Israel, I spent 4 days in Tel Aviv for Topol. My sister came with me on that shoot. And that was it. And then the UK. So it's strange to think that I only spent about 3 weeks in the States for the whole thing. But it's just what happens when you crowdfund and you have to, you have a limited budget and you just have to work with what you have, which is why there were a couple of people that I was trying to get interviews with, including Seth MacFarlane. Obviously, he was a very key person for the TED sequence. But when you only have 3 weeks and someone's schedule is so ridiculously busy, it's hard to fit it in. And he's also another one that I get emails for. So did you think about trying to get Seth? Yes, everyone, I really did want to get Seth for it. He's obviously an integral part of Sam's career. coming back up again. But it just, it couldn't happen. So that was the downside of doing the shoots from being in England and trying to do shoots in the States. But it wasn't really too many trips, which surprises me actually, even now watching it back.
So nuts and bolts wise, like what was your crew setup most of the time in making this?
It was pretty much myself and Ash doing it. We had...
So you guys would bring the lights and your own camera gear and mics and all that?
It was very minimal. It was myself and Ash. Occasionally when we had a really, I wouldn't say important, a big interview that we knew we couldn't get again if something happened, we would bring in someone else, like a DOP friend of ours that would come in, Richard O'Brien, because he lives in New Zealand normally, Brian May, we had someone else come in and do that. With Alex Ross, we brought someone else in. So occasionally we had additional crew come in for certain interviews, but majority of it was Ash and I. So it's handy being able to have a very skeleton crew, but at the same time it can lead to a lot of, especially when you're partners as well, it can lead to a lot of interesting conversations. But what we were lucky in is that the people we had met at various Comic-Cons, they were so great in just saying, like, how can we help? What can we do? So we had people in Alamo, like there was a guy called Matt Egan and Chuck Ritchie who just let us sleep in their house, and they were there on hand to try and help us get interviews. So we always had, in America, particularly San Antonio, we always had other people to help. But, when you look at other credits for documentaries, you have production coordinators and production managers and sound recordists, and there's a whole huge crews, but it really was just such a skeleton production because it had to be.
We just had so much help from all of our friends out there. I mean, from Jonathan doing music, my friend Big Dave shooting, Dennis shooting. We just pulled in so many favours. Simone, who helped us do the grade.
Yeah, we wanted to use this section to be a bit of an Oscar speech to say a big thank you, because it's hard doing it, with such a small crew. Like we were saying, like majority was Ash and I, but we couldn't have done it without all these people that kind of saved our ass a lot of the time. So I now find myself with another 30 seconds to try and fill. So I just wanted to thank everyone who was listening to this audio commentary and taking the time to listen to myself, Bob, and Ash when he pops up. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate all the support everyone has given to this film. And I will stop now because I have only a few seconds left, and of course Brian May's coming up.
And Brian May is on screen now.
Yeah.
Should be, if we're timing this right. He he was one we definitely made sure we had someone else come in. But he was so brilliant in the fact that when we arrived there and he wasn't around when we first got there, so we thought, okay, we'll set up and do our thing at his piano. So that was shot in his house. And the reason that, like, the piano's in the corner anyway, I've had a couple of people say to me, why is he cramped in the corner? His whole house is like an archive museum. That all his guitars, these red guitars, were all out on one side, and people were sorting out his archive photos around the other side, and it is like a museum, his house. And I first saw a glimpse of him kind of brush past the window and that hair. And I remember saying to Ash, "Oh my God, it's Brian May. I can't do this. I don't know what to say to him." And he walked in. And then he said, I'll go and get ready. And, he came back down in a few minutes, and he came down in that shirt with a Flash album, with a Flash mug. And he went, "Is this too much?" I said, "Brian, no, you wear whatever you want to wear for it." And because it's genuinely his baby. And he was just so incredible to be around. And again, like I had with that dinner with Sam and Melody, I was in the middle of interviewing him. And while he was answering a question, it just occurred to me that, oh my God, this is the guy that wrote, like, "We Will Rock You." And this is the guy that, like, wrote this song and this song. And he's actually playing Flash on the piano. And then I froze halfway, and I had to, luckily it was quite a long answer at the time. And I had to use the rest of his answer to just think, compose yourself, take a breath. You've got to ask another question, because he's such like this incredible energy that it's quite intimidating. So that was definitely one of the highlights, I think, was having him play that song in front of you,
sure.
in his house. Like, you walk in and there's like a throne and photos of Freddie, and
I mean, talk about living Flash Gordon, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty close.
Yeah, and then you're with the guy that wrote the song. It's just, it's so bizarre. So he was definitely one of the highlights. I think him and Topol singing in the car were the two most memorable experiences of the film.
Did you ever hear or ask him if there was a version of the Flash Gordon soundtrack without the film clips peppered into the record?
No, I didn't know.
If there
is that a rumor that there is?
Well, I mean, like, obviously they recorded the music and then they put in the, Gordon's alive, live, after. And I was just curious if that was part of the original plan or if that was some marketing person's plan or something. You should call him.
I'll just email him.
You can put that at the end of the.
Right. I believe that they wanted to have the soundtrack as though you're in the film again.
Yeah, so it definitely did that, for sure.
Yeah, I believe. But one thing he told me, and I might add this as one of the other special features in the DVD, was that they actually were playing, when they recorded it, they were playing live. So they were all in the studio watching a screen of the film, playing live to the footage to time it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I didn't realize, but it is genuinely you're hearing them.
I wouldn't have thought that either.
Yeah.
So it's more like John Williams, all the scenes of John Williams scoring Star Wars, like they were right there doing the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like when you watch the Flash Gordon music video and they're referencing the video, that's almost like what happened in the studio when they were doing the record for it. Fun fact, straight from Brian's mouth himself. Well, another fun fact that he told me, it's off a different tangent, he lives close to Brian Blessed obviously in England. And he said that occasionally he will be out having breakfast in his garden and he will just hear Brian Blessed yell Gordon's alive across the valley just because he wants to. And he's on his own with no reason to do it, and he just yells across the valley, and he just said it's hilarious because he just knows Brian.
It's like the call to prayer.
Exactly. Yeah, he just knows Brian's nearby when that happens, which I thought was really funny.
Now, quick shout out here to Howard, who is also on the screen. Anyone in America who is listening to this, Google The Snowman, because that is a classic in England and Howard is responsible for that. It is on every Christmas. It has been going for like 20 years. It is amazing for children. So do yourselves a favor and go and find a copy of The Snowman.
Right, so there's Sam with his wedding album. He was very sweet. Here's a fun fact about that was in his house. His books, if you can see on the back shelf, are organized by height. They go down in a slope, and then when he can, he does them by color. But they're all highest book first, goes down to the shortest book. So that's
interesting.
A little sneak peek into that section.
So he's just hyper meticulous in all things then.
Yes, he really is. So I have a question for you after watching the film. Is there anything that you had wanted to see or wanted to know about that wasn't covered?
That wasn't covered. Well, for me, and I asked Sam this too when I was talking to him, and I could just never get a clear answer. And I think it's in like the trailer or whatever, where like what was it like that day, right? Like there had to be a day where Sam was in California expecting to go back to loop his dialogue and finish the film.
Yeah.
And somebody called him and said, dude, you're not coming back. Did they say you're fired? Did they say we'll try? And then, there's references to, his handlers or whoever his agents were at the time. Uh, and like that's just kind of like a juicy detail being such a Flash fan that like any data on that I think would be interesting, right? Because that was the moment that really changed the path that he was on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he had said to me that I think the text is in the film as well, that the first time he knew, he just, because he never got the call, he just assumed that it wasn't happening and they didn't need him. And then it wasn't until he was in the cinema that he heard that they had changed his voice and no one had told him. And that's the
Right.
reason that he doesn't really watch the film too much now.
Right. Yeah.
Is because of it. But I think it was interesting as the more he watches these films when we're going to festivals, the more he is embracing the film, because I think he's able to see it with all these other people that are being touched by his story, and it doesn't affect him as much. I believe.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, I think you're totally right. When I was hanging out with him that weekend and doing the commentary, blah blah blah. Yeah, he was a little resistant to celebrate Flash Gordon. I mean, obviously he is Flash Gordon, but
and will
he
always
didn't.
be Flash Gordon. I don't care what remake they're doing.
Yeah, but I mean, you can really see that as someone who's hung out with him a couple times, like, yeah, he's kind of turned a corner in a really positive, like, lovely way. You hear all these stories, the whole "I am not Spock" or like
Yes.
William Shatner, or kind of pushing back, and actually Sam, like, he makes reference to it as far as like when he's at Comic Cons, right, and like giving people their due, right, and being there for the fans and staying late until the line is over, and that, like, it's just so, like, it's so great, right, because like you don't necessarily have to do that, right?
Exactly.
It's so giving, and it's got to be so odd for him. One thing I've always wanted to ask him is, do you ever, like, wake up in the morning, have an entire day, and go to sleep at night without hearing the name Flash Gordon?
That's a good
Is that like a constant, right? Because I know with you, you've probably said Flash Gordon at least once every day for 4 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like, has there been a day for you that has been like Flash free?
No. No.
Yeah.
But, but that's not 35 years though. It'll be interesting in 35 years if I'm still saying a Flash.
Yeah.
So that would be the good
test. Will
be. But I have to touch, just going on what you said, it works out well with this section with Mexico, because I wasn't sure who to expect when I first met Sam. Because you do think, am I going to meet an actor that is really in control and really demanding, or am I going to meet a man who has kind of pushed acting aside? And so I had no idea who I would meet. And then this shoot in Mexico was one of the most fun days we had. And to be fair to Sam, he organized the whole thing. He booked the car. He works with this guy Paul, really funny guy. He organized the whole thing. He paid for the car. He organized like the transport. He, with military precision, arranged for this day. And it really just was a fun day. And then we went and all had tacos for lunch. But of course, being Sam, he has to sit. Every time you go out to lunch with him or dinner, he sits facing the door so he can see all the exits. He knows. I quizzed him at this lunch in Mexico, and he didn't know I was going to do it. And about halfway through, I said, right, Sam, how many staff are they? Like, how many staff are there? How many security are there? How many doors are there? And he knew exactly the direction of every person, every window, every door. And he knew, like, he's the funniest person to be with, because he is just, you would always feel safe with Sam.
Right.
But he was so...
well, I mean...
he was so gracious.
Got a funny story, because like when we were in New York and Sam was taking us to dinner, this is my short Flash Gordon Saved My Life story. I was just so in awe of him when we're walking or crossing the street, and I was just so, you know, uh, mind starstruck, I guess. I walked out, and this taxi came by and almost hit me, and Sam like grabbed me and put me back on the sidewalk. And
I
it's my
expected you to say that he grabbed me and like flew to the nearest first floor window, like, and the cape
That's
came
right.
out, and but you
Yeah.
feel like that. You genuinely like feel that he is, and I know there's a segment at the end of the film where people are saying he is Flash Gordon, but you do feel that. But it was such a fun day, this Mexico shoot. Um, but it's interesting because it's I remember being in Tijuana when I was a little girl, and it really has changed, and it's not it doesn't feel like the safest place to be anymore, but
Right.
and then it really hits you that that's his, like, what he was doing at that time. Now he has moved back into Comic Cons and is going back into films, but at the time he would get up at literally 3 a.m., be at the border by 5, be working these crazy hours in this city that doesn't
Yeah.
feel the safest, and then going back at 10 o'clock, having amazing family time, and then doing it all again. And he's so dedicated to
He
everything.
seems like he was really, yeah, like really proud of that, right? Like in the context of the film, what's kind of interesting, like that's the most kind of present day, right? Like everything else is like him kind of
Discussing the
looking
past.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and of course, near the end, you know, like the whole Ted part and everything, right? Like that starts moving forward again. But to see him, you know, in his natural environment, yeah, I found that was one of the more interesting parts of the
Yeah.
film. And I don't know, knowing Sam, if I would have gone down there with him, that seems like, oh my God, are you going to get in like a shootout, or like what's going to happen? You guys must have been freaking.
Oh no, I wanted to. Because my impression of what it was going to be like was, I was like, I want to get Sam like on the side of the road with guns, and we'd be like driving
Yeah, yeah.
along, and but because it's so under the radar, a bit that we actually cut out that I want to put in as another special feature is that he goes through the whole car process, and they sometimes add little stickers on the car of families to detract people thinking it's like a family van, and they really go to a lot
Oh,
of
cool.
effort to make it, to play it down. And I was expecting us like driving along the streets of Mexico, like chasing all these bad guys, but it really isn't. And
Right. He's like so gung ho. Like,
yeah, it's like the
there's
80s.
a couple times where I've called him and he's been at work, where he's like, oh, hey, Bob, I'm at work. It's like,
Yeah.
all right. And we'll be talking, hey, Fly, Sam, what about this? And hold on. And then, you hear her, and it's like, wow, that's like super act. I mean, on the other end of the phone, it's just like, whoa, he is really doing something, you
Yeah,
know,
he's like saving people from
just saying.
assassinations. But I have to
Totally.
touch on, while we're on this Mexico section, I
Yeah.
really love the music in this section, because your section, the prop section, and this section are my favorite pieces. And we had this really talented composer called Toby Dunham, who came on board for the love of Flash to help out. And I really feel like it's worth noting those musical sections
Definitely.
in particular, for
Did
the
he
for the
did he
props in
chase you
Mexico.
down then and volunteer, kind of like I did?
I was so lucky because you emailed like a god out of the blue offering help for this film. Jason Lindsay did the same thing. Toby, who did the
Yeah.
music. Ed, a guy called Ed Emerson, who did all the graphics, where you can see them all come up. There's different graphics for locations as there are for names. Um, I was really lucky that all these people came out and said, I just want to be involved in any way I
Well,
can.
Jason even flew to London to MC
Yes. Well,
the 35th thing.
you flew to London. Jason flew to
I
London.
yeah.
And it makes you realize, like, I often think, I wonder what the film would have been like if all these people hadn't emailed and said that they would help. Because it really makes it, without you, I wouldn't have the opening titles and that behind the scenes footage. And then without Jason, it's funny, with Jason and Rich, with the interview, the two of them together in Meltdown Comics in LA.
Yeah.
I
Which
had
is
said to,
gone now,
which
sadly.
is gone. I had heard. I had said to
Yeah.
Jason, because I sometimes I get stuck in my ways. Like the 2 hours 15, I need reassuring that it could be different. So I said to Jason, I think I'll do the interview just with you. We're getting a lot of single interviews. I'll get it with you. He said, no, trust me, we need to do this interview with Rich together. And I took some convincing, and thank God he convinced me, because those two are two of the funniest people that I think I've ever interviewed in my very short career.
Yeah, super funny.
And
they keep coming back. Like it's a great thread through the whole film.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't wait to see them being silly again together.
Yeah. And it was nice. What I loved about Rich was the little things in films. Like he talks about, with like the Pac Bell phone and Die Hard.
Pac Bell phone and Die Hard. Yeah.
People want those kind of things about the memory going backwards, and have you noticed this and have you noticed that? And that's what I particularly loved about his interview, was the little things that you take away, and also how other people see the film. And I think maybe he was seeing it very differently to a lot of people.
I agree. Yeah. It was that was super cool. Super cool.
Yeah.
Was it your like, as far as decision making process, like was it always your plan not to be in the film and like not interviewing people? Right.
Yes.
I remember when you came over to my house to do my interview, it was, like, don't answer your question directly because you aren't necessarily in the film, and like you're not mic'd answering the questions and stuff like that.
I didn't really want to get in the way. I think a lot of times when you have the people in the film, I guess it's they're normally on a journey. Like if I was maybe hosting it and saying, oh, I'm going to search out Sam and trying to do, but I didn't want to take away from the film. I didn't feel like I needed to be in it. It's not my story that I was telling.
Right.
So I wanted it to stand alone, which, it could have worked if I was in it, but I wanted the focus to be on the film and the people telling their stories, because the film is essentially my story. This is an hour and a half of what I've always wanted to watch and see and be a part of. So yeah, I did kind of think about it at the very beginning, but it didn't feel right to do, and I don't think it would have worked at all, unless I was on some self-discovery journey of, can I find the inner Flash Gordon in myself, maybe. But I don't think that would have worked. But we're on the Comic-Con section now. So this Comic-Con section used to be 15 minutes long, the entire section. And I was so obsessed. There were so many amazing people at all of these Comic-Cons. And the majority of what you see is at Alamo, but we did quite a lot of shooting at Wizard World in Portland as well, which is where we came and hung out with you as well.
Yeah. And Barry Bostwick there.
And Matt Barry, yeah. But it's so overwhelming because there's all these incredible people that I just got distracted, and I was like, how many people can I try and get in the film? I wanted to interview as many people as possible. So the original Comic-Con section was about 15 minutes long, and there was Nichelle Nichols. I had I'm going blank on his name. I don't actually know how to pronounce it. Kia from 2001. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Yes. So he was in it, and obviously Barry Bostwick and all these people that was hard to cut. Because for me, I just thought, oh, bless Nichelle Nichols. I mean, how can you cut her? But
totally.
That was a.
So is that where you hooked up with Richard Donner also?
No.
Like, how'd you get that in?
So I emailed him. I emailed him to interview him for another film. And on the back of that interview, I had just said, can I just ask you a question about, not Flash Gordon, but knowing that he had that relationship, because with Superman, one of the threads in the film was obviously, what do you do when you're attached to this character that so many people love? And Christopher Reeve obviously had that as well. And so I thought it was a great little question to throw in. So Dick Donner, as he likes to be called, could be in the film. But I have to say, his office is the greatest office I have ever been in. in my entire life. When you walk in, he's got the clapperboards from every film he's done. So The Omen, The Goonies, Superman.
Oh,
All
wow.
the clapperboards are on the top of his wall. He has the original One-Eyed Willy skull in a glass case from The Goonies next to his desk. So
Nice.
in the interview, he's on the right of screen, just off to the left of screen is where the Goonies skull is. And then he said he's got this massive life-size Superman coming out of his house in LA. He got builders someone gave him this sculpture, and he has this Superman kind of pushing through his house. So he was the greatest.
So everybody knows
of
where he
it.
lives then.
So everyone probably knows. I don't know how visible it is. I think it's on poolside. But no, he was one of the most amazing people. And I have had comments where people have said I've maybe got too many people in the film. But
interesting.
I feel like they're all very relevant to the story. But it has been interesting, the feedback from people who have seen the film, where some people go, you know what, maybe half the people, because then you have time to connect with them more. But I feel like the people that you need to connect with, you have the time. I would have liked to have put more of Sam's kids in, speaking of. Would have liked more of the kids, because they were like exactly like Sam and Ramona, like the most polite children you could ever meet, and so talented at everything. It's ridiculous. So I would have liked to have had them.
I was really curious about like Matthew's subplot, which is longer in the original cut of the film. Just he definitely has some feelings about that time in his dad's career, in a way that doesn't at least show on his other kids. And I was able to chat with him a little bit at the LA preview of the film, and I was able to ask him just a little bit about that. And of course, it was a big party, so he was very generous. But I think he did a great job of knowing, right? Like the film never gets like dark or bad. Like he's kind of the, just his feelings on it. Like you could tell that, more so than almost anybody else besides maybe his ex-wife, I guess, that was a hard, his life after Flash is interesting also.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, he really lived it. He was, him and his other sister were the ones that lived the ups and the downs and the frustrations and the bankruptcy and then the successes, and you could see you could see when he talked, it still was there with him. But I chose to not tell their side too much, because I still wanted the focus to be on Sam. But I had hoped I had done it in a way that you could see how much it did affect them without needing to really go into details, because I didn't feel like it was details. Because it wasn't their story so much, and I don't feel like it needed to be said. But
100%.
I hoped I touched on it in a way that you could see how much it affected them, but then also at the same time how he as a father made such a difference to them.
Totally.
It really, they are, and I'm not just saying this, they are the most incredible family. Like, all the children are so polite, and they have, especially what the elder two have gone through, have just turned into this family that you expect to see on television. So it really was an amazing experience, and to also have them open their doors and be able to, like, I didn't actually go to Sam and say, I need to really interview all your family and friends. He came to me and said, right, I've set up all these interviews for you. Like, he actually set up the interviews and the time and the location, and he gave me a schedule. And I didn't expect that. And so that was an incredible thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, an incredible thing to happen. And also, from saying before, when he would just say to them, just be completely honest.
Let it rip. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest surprises of how open he was with everything. But I think from when you see all these stories that all his friends are telling about him as a person, it makes sense now when I hear these stories back, that you go, actually,
Right.
like, even though he had these moments of being all about me, like, he was still putting a lot of other people first and would do anything for anyone else, which, you know, you kind of come away and going, maybe I wasn't a good friend to people. Maybe I should be more like him.
Right.
But
Well, you can kind of see the friction, or friction's probably not the right word, but just kind of the film, I think, really shows, traits of the old Sam and how far he's come, right? Like some of his personality traits of taking charge and being in control, right? Like it feels to me like that is kind of a glimpse of his personality, like
Yes.
during the time of Flash Gordon, but like way more intense.
yeah, because you can see
and-
it, like him, this is Melody's table, this is my table, people are going to come
Yeah.
through signing here, this is the poster, this is the thing, you know, it's definitely in there, but it could be the military as well. You know, he's brought up
Yeah.
in such a regimented environment.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of he's kind of taken, at least, this is just me reflecting back on the film because I've seen it so many times, but just that, his choices to focus on family and everything, like Ramona said, and, and there was a time where he literally wasn't Flash Gordon there
Yeah.
for a while, right? And he was able to dig deep and take that same kind of star power 80s intention and really focus it on his family,
Yeah.
right? So it's not that he's abandoned that quality that got him into trouble during the film. He's repurposed that quality for good,
Yes.
right? You know what
Yeah,
I'm trying to say? Like,
he
it's
has
just kind of
that-
that vibe.
That focus.
Like, he's not cured of that vibe, that persona. He's just he's just living that way in a much healthier, positive way. He's
Yeah.
using his powers for good.
Yes. He's being
Speak.
Flash Gordon the man, not Flash Gordon the superhero.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think when you hear all the stories of his friends, that even though he went through all of that, they're still just as close knit. You know, I think it says something, and it was amazing to see. There's a group of them. So you got Patrick, Dana, Terry, Rick Hill, who we shot outside. Which I wish in the background of the swimming pool there's like an inflatable that I wish I had moved, but I didn't see it 'cause we didn't have a monitor, and I can't unsee it now. So you'll always see this like tube thing in the background. But they had this group of friends for like 30 years, and it just, you come away really going, I wish I had that kind of friendships with people that you're kind of in the same city with, that you're always there for, you know, you kind of have your back, and it's a very wonderful thing to see. So one day, but yeah, it was definitely something to aim for, which
Right.
maybe one day. But we're getting to the end of the film.
Yeah.
I think.
So
Wait.
is this final bit in your head the Flash Gordon, you save the Earth, moment?
Yes.
Did you always hope to end the film on that note?
This was the and the credits was like the first thing that I cut. And I was like, I know that it's going to end like that. And obviously,
Nice.
like, again, Toby did the music just right, and Ed's graphics. I was like, I want like lightning, and I want it to look like it. But it was the first thing pretty much on the timeline. And then I had to spend 3 years trying to work out where to fill the other 90,
work
90
out
minutes.
why everybody's saying yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, it has a good, I mean, I know you, like, it does parallel kind of the original film, like in spirit, for sure, right?
Yeah.
You've been on a journey with Flash again. I love all these little lovely parts at the end.
Dude, so now this
Turn
was
their
actually all in the main body of the film. and it was
Yeah,
just too
yeah.
long. So I just thought, how can I get little snippets into it? But I would have loved to have explored everyone's life story a bit more. But there are so many people in it that it just there's no time. Like if you start to talk about Melody's life, you go, oh, I'd love to talk to Richard O'Brien about his life in New Zealand now, and then you think, well, you know, then there's a whole conversation I had with Deep Roy where he rapped for us and talked about his plans for
Yes, I saw that. That part was.
He wants his own talk show, and you know, we have the rap. Yeah. I might release that too.
You should. You
should. It was called Ambition.
As an MP3. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, how do you choose? You know, you don't want to say that someone's post-Flash life is more interesting than the other. So it's like trying to keep them all as even as possible. But I have a question.
Yeah, and you'd be hard pressed to. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I have a question for you because I don't know how popular the snowman is in America. Do you have that there at all? The cartoon?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
So American audiences won't appreciate Howard Blake, who wrote the score for this film called The Snowman, which is the biggest Christmas film here in England. I mean, it's out every year. It's been in the theatre for 20 years.
Bigger than Rankin Bass's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? That's what America has.
No, I don't know that. I was curious about American audiences because it's interesting. I didn't know how the film would play to American audiences versus British audiences, with things like Peter Duncan was big here as a Blue Peter presenter, but I don't think anyone in America knows him. And Howard obviously had the snowman, and I don't think people in America. So it was an interesting... it's interesting to see it being played in different audiences and who connects. Brian Blessed has been the universal winner across the UK and American audiences, at least.
There you are.
Yes.
The only shot in the
exactly.
back of your head.
Yeah, but it is because it's a predominantly UK cast and crew, so it was interesting to see. I wasn't sure how it would pan out, but hopefully it goes really well in America.
How do you think? This may be an interesting way to finish it out. Look, how has Sam received the film now that he's obviously seen it done, and it was such a huge chunk of his life? Yeah,
so he said to me he tears up every time we watch it in a festival together, which makes me really you don't want to say pleased that someone's crying, but I'm pleased that it touches him how I hoped it would.
Touches him, yeah.
Yeah, but he had said that it took him a few goes to watch it as an audience member as opposed to someone in the film. But the biggest thing he takes out of it is hearing people talk about you. You know, his daughter telling the story about cycling to get the ice cream, and when you hear friends reflect on how much you mean to them without you around, is the biggest thing that he's taken from it.
All right, Lisa. Well, we're finished up here.
We are.
Thank you so much for making it.
Any
final thoughts?
You're very welcome.
On your adventure?
I am just very pleased that it's finished, and I'm very pleased that you were involved. Otherwise, it would be a much duller film. We wouldn't have the props, and we wouldn't have that amazing behind-the-scenes footage.
And this amazing commentary.
Yeah, exactly. This really well thought out, planned commentary. No, it's weird to see that it's like 4 years of work in this tiny, 90-minute film. It's not perfect, but it was made with love.
Indeed. Exactly. Fantastic.
Well, thank you, Bob.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Until next time.
Until next time.